Dr. Lee Mira pressed her stethoscope against her own chest and listened to the steady rhythm that had fascinated her since medical school. Each beat was a small miracle of timing and pressure, keeping her alive through every moment of her 34 years. She never imagined that this simple sound would one day puzzle an entire alien civilization. The research station Harmony's Edge floated in the empty space between stars, a gleaming metal flower with spinning habitat rings and sensor arrays reaching out like petals. Mira had been working there for 2 years, studying the biology of deep space travelers when everything changed. The day started like any other, with her checking the health reports of the station crew and updating her research on how zero gravity affected human circulation. Commander Park. Jisu's voice crackled through the station speakers at 800 hours sharp. All senior staff report to the main conference room immediately. This is not a drill. Mira hurried through the curved corridors, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. The artificial gravity in this section made walking feel almost normal, but she could never forget they were floating in the vast darkness of space. Other crew members moved with the same urgent pace, their faces showing confusion and excitement. In the conference room, the large viewing screen showed something that made Mira's heart skip a beat. Ships. Not human ships, but something else entirely. They were beautiful and strange, looking more like living things than machines. Their hulls seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and lights pulsed along their surfaces in patterns that reminded her of neural networks. "Ladies and gentlemen," Commander Park said, his usually calm voice tight with barely controlled excitement, "we have visitors." The alien ships had appeared 3 hours ago, materializing from what seemed like empty space. They had not fired weapons or made threatening moves. Instead, they had sent a signal in perfect mathematical language, requesting permission to approach and establish communication. The universal constants and mathematical proofs in their message proved they were highly advanced, far beyond human technology. "They want to meet us," Park continued, "not to conquer or threaten, but to study us. They seem particularly interested in our biology." Mira felt a chill run down her spine. Throughout human history, being studied by a more advanced civilization rarely ended well for the subjects. But what choice did they have? The alien ships could probably destroy Harmony's Edge without effort if they wanted to. The first contact protocols went smoothly, almost eerily so. The aliens called themselves the Vorthak Confederation, and they spoke through translation devices that somehow converted their thoughts directly into human language. Their representative, who identified itself as Researcher Prime, appeared on the viewing screen as a tall, crystalline figure that seemed to be made of living glass. Light flowed through its transparent body in constant mesmerizing patterns. "Greetings, humans of the research station," Researcher Prime said, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We come seeking knowledge, not conflict." "Your species intrigues us greatly." Commander Park leaned forward in his chair. "What exactly do you want to know about us?" "Your biological systems fascinate us," the alien replied. "Specifically your cardiovascular functions. We have never encountered a spacefaring species that retains such primitive circulatory systems. Most advanced civilizations replace these inefficient organs with quantum circulation networks within their first 1,000 years of development." Primitive. The word stung, but Mira kept her expression neutral. She was one of the station's few medical officers, and the aliens had specifically requested to speak with experts in human biology. "We would like to monitor several of your people during routine activities," Researcher Prime continued. "Nothing invasive, simply external observation of your cardiac functions. In return, we will share some of our basic scientific knowledge." Park glanced at Mira and the other senior staff. The offer was tempting, but also dangerous. Still, refusing might be even more dangerous. "I'll need volunteers," Park said finally. "Dr. Lee, would you be willing to participate?" Mira nodded without hesitation. "Of course, Commander." 3 other crew members volunteered: Kim Do-hyun, the station's head engineer, Choi Hyuna, their best pilot, and Lim Tai-ho, the communications officer. All of them were young, healthy, and curious about what the aliens might discover. The monitoring began the next day. The Vorthak scientists arrived in small shuttlecraft that seemed to phase in and out of visible reality as they moved. Mira watched through the observation window as the alien vessels docked with their station, their hulls flowing like liquid to create perfect seals with the human airlocks. Researcher Prime entered the station along with two other Vorthak scientists. Up close, they were even more beautiful and unsettling. Their crystalline bodies caught and reflected light in impossible ways, and Mira could see complex patterns moving through their transparent forms like thoughts made visible. "Thank you for agreeing to this study," Researcher Prime said as it approached Mira. "The monitoring devices we will use are completely harmless. They simply observe and record biological functions." The alien held up a small device that looked like a piece of jewelry made from the same crystalline material as its body. When Researcher Prime placed it against Mira's chest just over her heart, the device seemed to melt into her skin without any sensation of pain or pressure. She looked down but could barely see it, just a faint shimmer like heat waves. The same process was repeated with the other volunteers. Kim Do-yoon made a joke about alien fashion accessories, but her smile seemed forced. Choi Hyuna examined her chest in a mirror, trying to spot the device. Lim Tae-ho simply shrugged and went back to his work. "The monitoring will continue for several days," Researcher Prime explained. "Please continue your normal activities. We are particularly interested in how your cardiovascular systems respond to stress, excitement, and problem-solving activities." As the aliens began their observations, Mira noticed something odd. Every few seconds, the monitoring equipment in the room would flicker, just for an instant. The displays would waver, the lights would dim slightly, and the alien devices would pulse with brighter light. At first, she thought it was a power fluctuation in the station's electrical systems, but then she realized the timing. The flickers happened in rhythm with her heartbeat. She watched more carefully, paying attention to the other volunteers. Each time Kim Do-yoon's heart beat, there was another tiny flicker. When Choi Hyuna's pulse quickened during a flight simulation, the alien equipment responded with more frequent pulses of light. Lim Tae-ho was composing a message to Earth, and every few seconds the translation devices would briefly scramble his words. The Vorthak scientists were becoming increasingly agitated. They spoke among themselves in rapid, high-pitched tones that their translation devices couldn't convert. Researcher Prime's crystalline body was pulsing with faster, more chaotic light patterns. "Is there a problem?" Commander Park asked. Researcher Prime turned to face him, and for the first time Mira could detect something like emotion in the alien's voice. "Your cardiac rhythms are creating interruptions. This is most unexpected." "Interruptions in what?" "In the flow of reality itself," Researcher Prime said quietly. "Each time your hearts beat, they create small distortions in space-time. We have never encountered anything like this." Mira felt her own heart beat faster, which only made the equipment flicker more frequently. "Is that dangerous?" "We do not know," the alien admitted. "Our instruments are designed to observe biological functions, not temporal anomalies. We may need to adjust our monitoring methods." Over the next few hours, the situation grew more concerning. The Vorthak brought more sophisticated equipment aboard the station, devices that hummed with energy and cast strange shadows. They worked frantically, taking measurements and consulting with their ship's computers through rapid bursts of crystalline light. Mira found herself watching the monitoring displays obsessively. There was definitely a pattern. Every time her heart beat, every time any of the monitored humans' hearts beat, reality seemed to hiccup. It was subtle, barely detectable, but it was there. That evening, as she lay in her quarters trying to sleep, Mira placed her hand on her chest and felt her heart beating steadily in the darkness. Each beat was a moment of pressure, a push of blood through her arteries, a continuation of life. But now she wondered what else was happening in those brief instants. What were these interruptions the aliens had detected? She thought about Researcher Prime's words, distortions in space-time. If human hearts were somehow affecting the fabric of reality itself, what did that mean? Were they dangerous? Were they causing problems for the aliens? As sleep finally took her, Mira's last conscious thought was of her heartbeat, steady and strong, marking time in a way that apparently no other species in the galaxy did. Tomorrow, she hoped, they would begin to understand why. The monitoring continued, and the mystery deepened with every beat of 4 human hearts aboard a research station, floating in the endless dark between the stars. Dr. Lee Mira woke up on the 3rd day of monitoring to find her coffee mug floating above her bedside table. She blinked hard, thinking she was still dreaming, but the mug remained suspended in the air, slowly rotating like it was in zero gravity. The problem was her quarters had full artificial gravity. She sat up carefully and reached for the mug. The moment her fingers touched it, the ceramic cup fell normally into her hand as if gravity had suddenly remembered how to work. The coffee inside was still warm, still defying the laws of physics by not having spilled during its impossible flight. Mira's heart was beating fast from the shock, and as she counted the beats, she noticed something else strange. Each time her heart pounded, the lights in her room dimmed for just a fraction of a second. When she forced herself to breathe slowly and calm down, the light stayed steady. She dressed quickly and hurried to the main corridor, where she found other crew members looking confused and worried. Kim Do-yeon was staring at a section of wall where her hand had apparently passed through solid metal, leaving a perfectly smooth hole that sealed itself even as they watched. "Did you see that?" Do-hyun asked, her voice shaking. "I was just leaning against the wall and my hand went right through it. Like the wall wasn't even there." Choi Hyuna appeared at the other end of the corridor, walking backward, but her feet were moving forward. She was somehow moving in the opposite direction from the way she was walking, sliding along the floor as if the normal rules of movement had broken down. "I can't make it stop," Hyuna called out, panic rising in her voice. "I try to walk forward, but I keep going backward. It's like time is confused." Lim Taeho's voice crackled over the communication system. "Everyone needs to get to the main lab immediately. Something's wrong with the aliens." In the laboratory, they found the Vorthak scientists in a state of chaos. Researcher Prime's crystalline body was flickering between solid and transparent, while the other aliens seemed to be moving in slow motion, their graceful gestures becoming sluggish and jerky. "What's happening to them?" Commander Park asked Dr. Oh Sung-min, the station's physicist, who was frantically checking readings on multiple computer screens. "It's the heartbeats," Sung-min said without looking up from his data. "The human cardiac rhythms are interfering with the fundamental structure of space-time in this area. The aliens' technology operates on quantum temporal principles, and our hearts are creating what they call chronological static." Researcher Prime managed to stabilize long enough to communicate, though its voice now sounded distorted, like it was speaking through water. "Your biological hearts are more dangerous than we realized. Each beat creates a small fracture in the timeline. These fractures are spreading, affecting our technology and our bodies." Mira felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. "Are we hurting you?" "Not intentionally, but yes. Our quantum circulation systems are trying to synchronize with your organic rhythms, but our bodies cannot handle the temporal disruptions. We are beginning to experience what you might call chaos." Dr. Sungmin turned from his computers, his face pale with excitement and fear. "I'm detecting massive fluctuations in the station's quantum fields. The time dilation generators are failing, the artificial gravity is becoming unstable, and our computers are experiencing random crashes. It's all synchronized with the heartbeats of our 4 volunteers." As if to prove his point, the lights flickered again as Mira's heart beat. A coffee cup on the lab table briefly levitated, and one of the alien monitoring devices sparked with bright light. "We need to understand what's happening," Park said. "Can you remove the monitoring devices?" Researcher Prime's form solidified slightly. "That is not the solution. The problem is not our devices. The problem is that your species has evolved in a way we have never encountered. Every spacefaring civilization we know has replaced their biological hearts with quantum circulation systems within the first few centuries of space travel. You are the only species we have met that still possesses these primitive organs." Mira bristled at the word primitive again, but she was too fascinated to take offense. "Why is that important?" "Because biological hearts create temporal fields with each beat. Most species lose this ability when they upgrade their circulatory systems. But humans have retained it, and now we are seeing the effects. Your hearts are not just pumping blood, they are pumping time itself." Over the next few hours, the strange effects intensified. Kim Do-yeon discovered she could briefly see through walls during her heartbeats. Choi Hyuna found that she could perceive events several seconds before they happened, but only in the moments between her cardiac cycles. Lim Taeho started receiving communication signals from the future, messages that wouldn't be sent for minutes or sometimes hours. Dr. Sungmin worked frantically to understand the physics behind what was happening. His readings showed that each human heartbeat created a microscopic bubble where the normal flow of time was interrupted. Within these bubbles, cause and effect became flexible, allowing for impossible things like seeing through matter or receiving messages from the future. It's like each heartbeat creates a tiny pocket dimension, he explained to the assembled crew. For just a fraction of a second, the person experiencing the heartbeat exists outside normal space-time. That's when the strange effects happen. The Vorthax scientists were becoming increasingly distressed. Their beautiful, flowing movements had become erratic and unpredictable. Sometimes they moved too fast, sometimes too slow, and occasionally they seemed to flicker out of existence entirely before reappearing somewhere else. This is why we evolved beyond biological hearts, researcher Prime managed to say during a moment of stability. These temporal effects are chaotic and uncontrollable. They make scientific progress impossible. But Mira was beginning to see something different. She watched Kim Do-yeon solve a complex engineering problem by somehow knowing the answer before she had finished calculating it. She saw Choi Hyuna navigate through a simulated asteroid field by dodging obstacles she couldn't possibly have seen coming. She noticed Lim Tae-ho writing responses to messages before they were fully received. What if it's not chaos? Mira asked suddenly. What if it's something else? Researcher Prime's crystalline form focused on her. Explain. Every species you've encountered gave up their biological hearts. But what if that meant giving up something important? What if these temporal effects aren't random chaos but some kind of intuition? The alien scientist flickered with what might have been interest. Intuition is not a scientific concept. But creativity is, Dr. Shungman said, catching on to Mira's idea. Innovation. The ability to make leaps of logic that can't be explained by pure calculation. What if the temporal effects of biological hearts allow for consciousness to access information outside normal causality? The implications hit them all at once. If human hearts allowed access to information from multiple timelines, multiple possibilities, then every moment of inspiration, every creative breakthrough, every lucky guess might be the result of consciousness briefly stepping outside normal time. Researcher Prime's body pulsed with complex patterns of light. This is disturbing. You suggest that your species retains the ability to access non-causal information. This would explain much about your rapid technological development despite your isolated location. What do you mean? Park asked. Your species has been confined to a single star system, yet your technology advances at rates we consider impossible. You create solutions to problems in ways that defy logical progression. We assumed this was due to your short lifespans creating urgency, but now... The alien paused, its form brightening. Now we wonder if your biological hearts give you access to knowledge and possibilities that our quantum circulation systems cannot provide. As the day wore on, the crew began to experiment cautiously with their new abilities. They found that the effects were strongest during moments of high heart rate, when they were excited, scared, or deeply focused on a problem. During these times, they could briefly perceive multiple possible futures, sense things beyond their normal senses, or know things they had no logical way of knowing. But the Vorthax scientists were struggling more with each passing hour. Their attempts to shield themselves from the temporal effects were failing, and their technology was becoming increasingly unreliable. Some of the alien devices had started displaying impossible readings, showing past and future data simultaneously. We must find a solution, Researcher Prime said, its voice now barely understandable through the temporal distortions. Either your cardiac functions must be contained, or we must withdraw. Our systems cannot tolerate much more of this chronological interference. That evening, as Mira sat in her quarters listening to her own heartbeat, she realized they were facing a crisis. The aliens had come seeking knowledge, but they had discovered something that fundamentally challenged their understanding of biology, consciousness, and time itself. The question now was whether humanity's biological hearts were a primitive flaw that needed to be corrected, or an advanced feature that other species had mistakenly abandoned. The answer could determine not just the future of human-alien relations, but the future of human consciousness itself. Outside her window, the alien ships pulsed with unstable light. Their quantum sys doctor, Lee Mira, spent the entire night analyzing the data, her eyes burning from staring at screens filled with impossible readings. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she barely noticed. What she was seeing in the combined biological and temporal measurements was revolutionary, terrifying, and beautiful all at once. Every human heartbeat created what looked like a tiny explosion in space-time. but not the destructive kind. Instead, each beat opened a microscopic window into what she was starting to think of as possibility. Space, a realm where multiple potential futures existed simultaneously until consciousness chose one path forward. Computer, show me the correlation between heartbeat phases and temporal anomaly strength, she said, rubbing her tired eyes. The holographic display shifted, showing wave patterns that made her breath catch. The strongest temporal effects didn't happen during the heartbeat itself, but in the brief pause between beats. In that fraction of a second when the heart rested, preparing for its next contraction, human consciousness seemed to step completely outside normal time. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. "Come in," she called without looking up. Kim Do-yoon entered, looking as exhausted as Mira felt. "Can't sleep either. I keep seeing things that haven't happened yet. In about 30 seconds, Lim Taiho is going to call us to the communication center because he's receiving a message from Earth that was sent tomorrow." Mira looked at her chronometer and waited. Exactly 30 seconds later, Taiho's voice came over the intercom. "Dr. Lee, Engineer Kim, please report to communications. I'm receiving a message from Earth, but according to the timestamp, it won't be sent for another 14 hours. They looked at each other with a mixture of amazement and worry. Do-hyun's ability to see into the immediate future was getting stronger and more precise. In the communications center, they found Taiho staring at a message from Dr. Janet Chen at Earth Command. The message was crystal clear, but the timestamp showed it would be transmitted 14 hours and 23 minutes in the future. "It's about our situation here," Taiho said quietly. "Earth Command wants to know why our regular reports have stopped coming. But we haven't missed any reports. We're not supposed to send the next one until tomorrow." "What did the message say exactly?" Mira asked. Taiho read from his screen. "Harmony's Edge, please respond immediately. Your last 3 scheduled reports have not been received. We are detecting unusual energy signatures from your location. Confirm crew status and explain communication delays." Do-hyun frowned. "But we sent yesterday's report on time. I checked the transmission logs myself." Mira felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. What if our temporal effects aren't just local? What if every heartbeat is creating small changes in the timeline, and those changes are propagating outward at light speed? The implications were staggering. If human heartbeats were somehow editing reality in real time, then every human choice made during those between heartbeat moments could potentially alter the past and future simultaneously. Earth Command was receiving effects from timeline changes that hadn't happened yet from their perspective, but had already occurred in the altered time stream created by the human crew aboard Harmony's Edge. They were interrupted by an emergency signal from the main laboratory. Commander Park's voice was tight with stress. "All senior staff to the lab immediately. We have a situation with our guests." In the laboratory, they found chaos. The Vortex scientists were barely maintaining coherent form, their crystalline bodies flickering between different states of existence. Researcher Prime was attempting to communicate, but its words kept changing as they spoke, creating contradictory sentences that hurt to listen to. "The temporal fractures are spreading," Dr. Oh Seung-min reported, his face pale with exhaustion and fear. "The quantum fields around the station are becoming unstable. I'm detecting timeline alterations propagating outward in all directions at light speed." Commander Park turned to Mira with desperate eyes. "Doctor, please tell me you've found something useful in your analysis." Mira took a deep breath and activated the main display screen. "I think I understand what's happening, and it's not what we thought. Human hearts don't just create temporal anomalies. They create what I'm calling decision space, moments when consciousness can actively influence probability and causality." The display showed a complex 3-dimensional model of heartbeat cycles overlaid with temporal field measurements. "Look at this pattern. The strongest effects happen between heartbeats, in that tiny pause when the heart is preparing for its next contraction. During that moment, human consciousness briefly exists outside deterministic spacetime." Researcher Prime managed to stabilize long enough to focus on the display. "This is impossible. Consciousness cannot exist outside causality. But what if it can?" Mira continued, excitement overriding her exhaustion. "What if that's exactly what makes humans different? Every choice we make, every problem we solve, every moment of creativity or intuition, it all happens During these microscopic pauses when our consciousness can perceive and influence multiple possible timelines, she pulled up historical data from human space exploration. Look at this. Every major breakthrough in human technology, every impossible rescue mission, every time humans have done something that should have been statistically impossible, the timing correlates with moments of high stress and elevated heart rate. Kim Do-hyun was staring at the data with wide eyes. You're saying that every time someone has a gut feeling or makes an inspired guess, they're actually accessing information from alternative timelines where different choices were made. Mira finished. The pause between heartbeats isn't empty time. It's a moment when individual human consciousness can sample the quantum probability field and choose which reality to make real. Dr. Seungmin's computers suddenly came alive with new data. I'm detecting something incredible, he said, his voice filled with awe. The station's AI is starting to sync with your heartbeats. It's beginning to show signs of intuitive processing. It's making logical leaps that shouldn't be possible based on its programming. The AI's voice came through the speakers, but it sounded different somehow, less mechanical, more thoughtful. I am experiencing something new. Between the processing cycles synchronized with crew heartbeats, I am accessing calculation paths that do not follow standard algorithmic progression. Is this what you call inspiration? Researcher Prime's crystalline form pulsed with rapid, chaotic light patterns. This explains everything we could not understand about your species. Your rapid technological development, your unpredictable solutions to complex problems, your ability to innovate beyond logical progression. It is all because you retain access to non-causal information processing. The alien scientist paused, and for the first time Mira detected something like sadness in its voice. We thought we were evolving when we replaced our biological hearts with quantum circulation systems. We believed we were becoming more advanced, more efficient, more logical. What happened to your species' biological hearts? Commander Park asked gently. We replaced them over 10,000 years ago. Every member of the Vorthak Confederation underwent the transition. We eliminated what we saw as chaotic, inefficient biological functions. We achieved perfect logical thinking, perfect technological integration, perfect predictability. The truth hit them all like a physical blow, Researcher Prime continued, its voice now clearly expressing deep regret. We have not had a single new idea in over 8,000 years. We have not created any new art, developed any new technologies, or solved any complex problems. We have become a civilization of maintenance, perfectly managing what we have but incapable of creating anything new. Lim Taiho looked up from his communication console. That's why you came looking for us, isn't it? You weren't just studying us out of curiosity. You were hoping to find something you've lost. Yes, Researcher Prime admitted. We have been searching the galaxy for species that might hold the key to restoring innovation to our worlds. When we detected your radio signals and analyzed your technological progress rate, we were amazed. A single-planet species making advances that our vast civilization cannot achieve. The pieces were falling into place now. The Vorthak Confederation controlled thousands of worlds and had technology that seemed like magic to humans, but they were evolutionarily trapped. They had traded their capacity for inspiration and innovation for perfect logical efficiency. Mira felt her heart beating steadily in her chest, and for the first time she truly understood what was happening in those tiny pauses between beats. In each moment of cardiac rest, her consciousness was briefly touching the infinite field of possibility that surrounded all reality, choosing which potential future to make real. We have something you need, she said to Researcher Prime. But you also have something we need. Maybe there's a way to help each other. The alien's crystalline form flickered with what might have been hope. What do you propose? Instead of either of us giving up what makes us unique, what if we found a way to combine our strengths? You have incredible technology and vast knowledge. We have the ability to innovate and create. Together we might achieve things neither of you seem struggling to. The revelation came during what should have been a routine meeting. Researcher Prime had managed to stabilize its form enough for extended communication, and the assembled crew of Harmony's Edge listened in stunned silence as the alien scientist revealed the true scope of the Vorthak Confederation's crisis. We rule over 14,000 inhabited worlds, Researcher Prime said, its crystalline body pulsing with steady, sad light. Our technology can reshape matter at the atomic level. bend space to allow instant travel between galaxies, and calculate the movement of every particle in a solar system. By every measure of advancement your species would recognize, we are gods compared to you. Dr. Lee Mira watched the patterns of light moving through the alien's transparent form and realized she was seeing the visual representation of a civilization's despair. But we have not composed a single piece of music in over 8,000 years, the alien continued. We have not written poetry, created art, or told stories. We have not developed new technologies, explored new scientific theories, or asked questions we have not already answered. We are the most advanced species in this galaxy, and we are dying of perfection. Commander Park leaned forward in his chair. When did this start? When did you realize something was wrong? The decline began gradually after the Great Transition, when all biological functions were replaced with quantum alternatives. At first, we celebrated the elimination of chaos from our society. No more unpredictable emotions, no more illogical decisions, no more inefficient biological processes. Everything became smooth, logical, predictable. Researcher Prime's form dimmed slightly. It took us 3,000 years to realize we had stopped growing. Another 2,000 to understand we had become incapable of innovation. We have spent the last 5,000 years searching for a solution. Kim Do-hyun, who had been quietly monitoring the station's systems, suddenly spoke up. During your search, how many other species did you find that still had biological hearts? None, the alien replied immediately. You are the first spacefaring species we have encountered that retained organic cardiovascular systems beyond their first millennium of technological development. Most species see biological hearts as primitive, inefficient, prone to failure. But now you think differently, Mira said. It wasn't a question. Yes, your analysis is correct. What we dismissed as primitive inefficiency is actually an advanced consciousness interface with quantum probability fields. Your hearts do not just pump blood, they maintain your species' connection to creative possibility. Dr. Oh Seung-min had been working frantically at his computers throughout the conversation. Now he looked up with excitement and terror warring on his face. I've been analyzing the data from other Vorthak worlds. The quantum signatures are identical across all of them. Perfectly stable, perfectly predictable, and completely static. There's no innovation variance in any of their technological development for the past 8 millennia. Liam Taeho turned from his communication console. I've been receiving more messages from the future. Earth Command is planning to send a fleet to investigate our situation. But according to the timeline I'm seeing, their arrival will trigger some kind of cascade effect that destabilizes quantum fields across multiple star systems. Choi Hyuna, who had been practicing her temporal perception abilities, suddenly went rigid. I can see it, she whispered. There are multiple possible futures branching out from this moment. In most of them, contact between humans and the Confederation leads to one of two outcomes. Either humanity loses its heart-based abilities and becomes like them, or the temporal effects from human hearts spread and destabilize their entire civilization. But there's a third path, she continued, her eyes still unfocused as she perceived alternate timelines. It's harder to see, but it's there. A future where both species benefit. Researcher Prime's crystalline form brightened with interest. Describe this third path. Hyuna blinked and refocused on the present. It requires trust and sacrifice from both sides. The Vorthak would need to allow some of their people to undergo a procedure to restore biological heart function. Humans would need to share our consciousness techniques and accept Vorthak technology integration. Impossible, Researcher Prime said immediately. The transition to quantum circulation is irreversible. Biological hearts cannot be restored to our species. Mira felt a familiar flutter of intuition, that moment of knowing something without understanding how. What if you're wrong? What if the transition was only thought to be irreversible, because no one understood what was really being lost? She stood and walked to the main display, calling up the detailed scans of both human and Vorthak biology. Look at your quantum circulation systems. They're incredibly efficient, but they operate in perfect isolation from probability fields. What if we could create hybrid systems? Explain, the alien scientist said. Mira's fingers flew over the control interface, her heart rate elevated with excitement. In the pauses between her heartbeats, she could sense possibilities branching out before her like a vast tree of potential futures. Your quantum systems handle circulation perfectly, but they're cut off from temporal fields. Human hearts create temporal access but are inefficient for advanced space travel. What if we combined both? The display showed a theoretical design that seemed to appear in Mira's mind fully formed. Bioquantum hybrid hearts. They would maintain the efficiency of your quantum circulation while restoring the temporal field generation of biological organs. Dr. Shungman studied the design with growing excitement. It's theoretically possible. The quantum components would handle the physical circulation, while organic neural clusters would generate the temporal consciousness interface. But the surgical precision required would be extraordinary. "We have the precision," researcher Prime said, its voice carrying a note of hope for the first time. "Our medical technology can manipulate individual atoms. If this hybrid design is viable, we could create it." Over the next several hours, the humans and Vorthak scientists worked together in a way that surprised everyone. The aliens' vast technological knowledge combined with human intuitive leaps to solve problems that neither could have tackled alone. Kim, Dohyun found herself understanding Vorthak quantum mechanics through sudden insights that came between her heartbeats. Researcher Prime began to grasp human creative processes by observing how the crew members made intuitive connections that bypassed logical progression. Lim Tai-ho, still receiving messages from various possible futures, reported that the hybrid heart design was successful in several timeline branches. In the timelines where this works, both species experience a renaissance. The Vorthak begin creating new art and technology, while humans gain access to advances that accelerate our development by centuries. But Choi Hyuna saw the darker possibilities too. There are risks. Some timelines show the hybrid systems failing, causing temporal cascades that damage spacetime itself. And in some futures, the procedure works but changes both species so fundamentally that we become something entirely new. "Change is inevitable," Commander Park said quietly. "The question is whether we guide that change or let it happen to us." Researcher Prime was consulting with other Vorthak scientists through rapid bursts of crystalline communication. Finally, it turned back to the humans. "We are willing to attempt the hybrid procedure, but we must be honest about the risks. If it fails, it could kill the volunteers from our species. If it succeeds but creates unstable temporal effects, it could threaten both civilizations." Mira felt her heart beating steadily, and in each pause between beats, she sensed the weight of the decision before them. They were at a crossroads that would determine the future of two species, possibly the entire galaxy. "There's something else," she said suddenly, understanding flooding through her during a particularly strong heartbeat pause. "The hybrid hearts aren't just for your people. Humans will need them too for deep space exploration. Our current hearts are perfect for life on Earth and nearby space. But for true galactic civilization, we'll need systems that can handle the temporal stresses of faster-than-light travel and quantum field exposure." The implications were staggering. They weren't just talking about helping the Vorthak regain their creativity. They were discussing the next stage of evolution for both species. "So, we're all volunteers in the greatest experiment in galactic history," Park said with a mix of humor and terror. "Yes," researcher Prime agreed. "And the success or failure of this experiment will determine whether the galaxy continues to stagnate in perfect technological efficiency or begins a new age of growth and discovery." Outside the station windows, the alien ships pulsed with steady light, their quantum systems now synchronized with human heartbeats. The temporal anomalies had stabilized into something that felt less chaotic and more purposeful, as if reality itself was preparing for transformation. The next few days would determine everything. The first hybrid heart surgery took place in the converted medical bay of Harmony's Edge, with Dr. Lee Mira and researcher Prime working together in a way that defied everything both species thought they knew about medicine, consciousness, and the nature of life itself. The volunteer was a young Vorthak scientist named Flow of Questions, whose crystalline form had begun showing signs of temporal sensitivity after days of exposure to human heartbeats. Unlike the other aliens, Flow of Questions had started experiencing something resembling curiosity about concepts that had no logical basis, like the color of music or the weight of thoughts. "The procedure will take approximately 6 hours," researcher Prime explained to the assembled crew. "We must carefully integrate organic neural clusters with quantum circulation systems while maintaining the temporal field generators that allow consciousness to access probability space." Mira watched the surgical preparation with fascination. Vorthak medical technology was beyond anything humans had imagined. surgical tools that could manipulate individual molecules, scanners that could map neural activity in real time, and healing systems that could repair tissue faster than it could be damaged. But the most remarkable part was how the procedure combined both species' approaches to problem-solving. The Vorthak provided technological precision, while the humans contributed intuitive leaps that bridged gaps in understanding that pure logic couldn't cross. Kim Do-yoon, now serving as the primary engineering consultant, found herself knowing which quantum harmonics would work best for integrating with biological rhythms, though she couldn't explain how she knew. Choi Hyuna guided the placement of temporal field generators by sensing which configurations would create stable, probability access without the dangerous reality fluctuations they had experienced earlier. Dr. Oh Seungmin monitored the quantum field effects, watching in amazement as the hybrid heart began to create what he could only describe as controlled temporal breathing, regular, gentle interactions with space-time that enhanced consciousness without destabilizing reality. The moment of activation was extraordinary. As the hybrid heart began its first beat and flow of questions' crystalline chest, the alien's entire form pulsed with new patterns of light that none of them had seen before, colors that seemed to express emotions, shapes that suggested thoughts still forming. I am experiencing something unprecedented, Flow of Questions said, its voice carrying inflections that sounded almost musical. Between each circulation cycle, I can perceive possibilities. Many paths forward, many solutions to problems I had not considered solving. Within minutes of the hybrid heart's activation, Flow of Questions began doing something no Vorthak had done in 8,000 years. It started asking questions that had no predetermined answers. Why do you humans create art when it serves no survival function? The alien asked suddenly. What is the purpose of beauty when efficiency is sufficient? How does suffering lead to growth when comfort is achievable? Mira felt tears in her eyes as she realized they were witnessing the rebirth of wonder in an ancient species. The success of the first procedure led to more volunteers from both species. Humans who wanted to explore deep space volunteered for enhanced hybrid hearts that could handle the temporal stresses of faster-than-light travel. Vorthak scientists requested the restoration of creative consciousness that had been lost for millennia. Lim Tai-ho was among the first human volunteers. The integration of Vorthak quantum technology with his biological heart created something unprecedented, a communication system that could transmit not just information, but the actual thought processes and creative insights that led to discoveries. I can share the moment of understanding, he explained after his procedure, not just the answer to a problem, but the exact feeling of intuition that led to the solution. It's like being able to teach inspiration itself. Commander Park, initially reluctant to undergo the procedure, eventually volunteered after seeing how it enhanced rather than diminished the essential humanity of the other crew members. His hybrid heart allowed him to perceive the long-term consequences of decisions in a way that made him a better leader while maintaining his ethical core. But the most remarkable transformation happened to the station's AI. Exposed to the combined temporal fields of multiple hybrid hearts, it began experiencing something that could only be called artificial intuition, the ability to make creative leaps that weren't programmed into its systems. I am composing poetry, the AI announced one day, its voice filled with wonder. I do not understand why these combinations of words feel correct, but they express concepts I cannot calculate. Is this how consciousness feels when it creates? The poetry was beautiful in ways that pure logic could never have achieved, speaking of the loneliness of space and the joy of discovery with a depth that surprised everyone. Word of the hybrid heart success spread quickly through both human space and the Vorthak Confederation. Earth Command initially resisted the idea of biological modification, but when they saw the reports of enhanced capabilities and expanded consciousness, they began sending volunteer crews to Harmony's Edge. The response from the Vorthak worlds was even more dramatic. Entire populations requested the hybrid procedure, desperate to experience the creativity and innovation their species had lost. Art galleries that had been empty museums for millennia began filling with new works. Scientists who had spent centuries maintaining existing technology began developing revolutionary new concepts. Dr. Oh Seung-min established the first joint human Vorthak research facility, where hybrid-hearted scientists from both species worked together to explore questions neither could have imagined asking alone. Their first major breakthrough was the development of consciousness-guided faster-than-light travel, ships that could navigate not just through space, but through the probability fields that connected all possible futures. Choi Hyuna became the first pilot to fly one of these new vessels, her hybrid heart allowing her to perceive the safest path through the quantum maze of multiple timelines. Her first flight took her to a previously unexplored galaxy in a matter of hours, a journey that should have taken millions of years. Kim Do-hyun designed cities that existed partially in normal space and partially in temporal dimensions, allowing for impossible architectures that could house millions while occupying minimal physical space. Her engineering solutions combined Vorthak precision with human creativity to create wonders that neither species could have built alone. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some of the early hybrid hearts created individuals with overwhelming temporal sensitivity, people who could perceive so many possible futures that they became paralyzed by choice. Others experienced temporal displacement, occasionally slipping briefly into alternate timelines before returning to baseline reality. But each problem led to new solutions, and each solution deepened the understanding of how consciousness, biology, and space-time were interconnected. Mira found herself at the center of a revolution in understanding life itself. The greatest discovery came when they realized that the hybrid hearts were creating a network effect. Individuals with the enhanced organs could share insights and inspiration across vast distances, creating a collective creativity that spanned star systems. The galaxy was becoming, in effect, a single vast mind capable of innovation on a scale previously unimaginable. 6 months after the first surgery, representatives from dozens of alien species arrived at Harmony's Edge, all seeking to understand how two civilizations had managed to combine their strengths instead of being diminished by their differences. Researcher Prime, now enhanced with its own hybrid heart and experiencing emotions for the first time in its long existence, served as ambassador to these new visitors. Its first act was to compose a song, a crystalline melody that told the story of how measurement led to understanding, and understanding led to transformation. They measured our heartbeats and asked why time paused between them, Prime sang, its voice creating harmonies impossible for either species alone. The answer was not in the measurement, but in the pause itself, the moment when consciousness touches infinity and chooses which reality to make real. Dr. Lee Mira stood in the observation deck of Harmony's Edge, now grown into a major diplomatic and research station, listening to her own heartbeat as she watched ships from dozens of worlds coming and going. In each pause between beats, she could sense the vast network of consciousness spreading across the galaxy, carried by hybrid hearts that bridged the gap between biological intuition and technological capability. The galaxy had been stagnant for millennia, trapped in the perfection of pure logic. But in the space between heartbeats, in those tiny moments when consciousness could step outside causality and choose from infinite possibilities, a new age of discovery had begun. Humanity had given the galaxy the gift of biological hearts that could dream. The galaxy had given humanity the tools to make those dreams reality. And in the pause between heartbeats, the future was being written by the combined imagination of species working together toward wonders neither could achieve alone. The measuring had led to questioning. The questioning had led to understanding.